earthquake shook central Idaho this morning. Though it happened hundreds of miles away, folks in the valley say they could feel the tremors.
Well, we begin today in Plainfield, where for a third time in recent days, that area has been shaken by an earthquake.
Eleven earthquakes in just the last 24 hours. And of course, the new concern over what's causing this.
Yep, we're having an earthquake. You think California, Japan, maybe Mexico, but Texas?
Did we just have an earthquake? Yes, ma'am, I believe we did.
In the last 24 hours, nearly a dozen small quakes clustered near the town of Irving, leaving Texas-sized cracks.
It's absolutely hammering the UK. If you live there, you know what I'm talking about. Big old windstorm. Hey, we've got a big, powerful, and very impressive storm in the North Atlantic right now.
Well, the temperature one said that, and here's a scary way to look at it. If you are 29 years old or younger, which disqualifies me, I must acknowledge, you have never lived in a month in which global temperatures were not higher than they were over the course of the entire 20th century average. Global temperatures this year are about 58.25 degrees worldwide, which is 2 degrees higher than the global average in the 20th century. Now, if 2 degrees doesn't sound like much, consider how different you feel when you run a 98.6 degree fever as opposed to close to 101. The planet is exactly as sensitive to those subtle changes as we are.
Jeffrey, one of the other studies, a Harvard Rutgers study, said that the oceans hadn't risen in the past century as much as we thought, 5 feet instead of 6. But it also said at the end of the century, it accelerated enormously, and we're now going up about a foot per century. What is that telling us?
Well, this tells us that we reach this sort of tipping point event. As oceans warm and as ice caps melt, what happens is sunlight stops being reflected back into space. Instead, it begins being absorbed by the darker waters of the ocean. So the more the ice caps melt, the faster they melt, and the more water is poured into the oceans, causing sea levels to rise. We're on a target now for 3 feet of sea level increase by the end of the century, and every inch of sea level increase is 2 quadrillion gallons of water, and that pours straight off the ice caps and straight off the glaciers.
It also seems to really affect what's happening underneath the water, all of the creatures that live below.
That's right, yeah. We are at the verge of, this was a study that came out of Science, the verge of what's being called a major extinction event. The oceans are becoming warmer and also more acidic as a result of carbon being sunk into them. We're seeing collapse of fish stocks. We're seeing the migration of the surviving stocks from waters that have become too warm for them to colder waters. We're seeing collapse of coral reefs. Whales, which have until recently been protected by some global bans, are now dying as a result of collisions with the increased number of cargo ships. The ocean bottom is being damaged by bottom dredging and also by minerals resource mining. We're basically taking the one area of the world that we didn't have so much access to and damaging it in the same way we are the land.
Such an important conversation to be having right now.
It's quite scary.
Jeffrey Kluger, thank you so much.